Hi, everybody. Sorry about that technical hitch. And I realised that 10 minutes is a very long time on Zoom. So thank you for staying with us. And what I'm going to do now is share my screen and start the presentation. Oh, and I should say, my name's Julie Lomax and I'm the CEO of AN. Okay. Okay, I hope that everybody can see that. It looks like it's sharing fine for me. Um, okay, so I'll get on with it. And yeah, thank you, as I said, for staying with us on this. And we all learn something new about Zoom every time we use it. So this is part of our artist drop-in session, and today we're going to be looking at developing your creative practice, which is a funding program by Arts Council from Arts Council England. So firstly, run through some of the things that you can do before you get into the application. So if you need support, get support. So Arts Council England provide access support, and you can do this by getting in touch with them, inquiries at artscouncilengland.org.uk. And what they can do is they provide the guidance in other formats, such as easy read, large print, etc., BSL Braille. They can also pay for a support worker to help you fill in an application, and they can also accept BSL applications, and they can also give you some ideas and advice around managing your project and making your project accessible should you need that. And so in terms of support, this is for disabled and neurodiverse applicants. Okay, so access support to make an application can be requested 4 weeks before DYCP. I'm going to use that acronym, Developing Your Creative Practice, DYCP round opens. However, they haven't updated their website on the dates for this. So I would say for this round, which is round 19, check the deadline for requests for access support, because there's usually a deadline. Clearly, it would be if you were looking for a support worker to help you with your application, requesting access support for round 19, say 2 days before it's about to close, that's not really going to work in terms of the time frame. I also would say to everybody, if you can, to take the quiz and watch the video online. By taking the quiz, and it doesn't mean that this is part of your application. It's really just to test whether you're ready to make an application to developing your creative practice. There is easy read guidance. I would err a little bit on the caution side here with both the two lots of guidance. So there's long guidance and easy read guidance, because with the easy read guidance, it's got all the key facts that you need to know. But if you're somebody like me that wants to kind of make sure you understand everything before you start, then I would say go to the long guidance. And definitely it's worth looking at previous awards and the case studies. And if you haven't got a profile in Grantium, Grantium is the program that you'll need to apply, put your application in so that you can apply set up an applicant profile. You will need to be thinking about fair pay. So obviously fair pay for yourself, but also anybody else that might be involved in the project. So have a look at the fair pay guidance. And also there are links on Arts Council website to organisations like AM, but also other organisations like the Musicians Union, etc., around, you know, rates of pay that you might have to pay any new project. There is a section on feedback. I always say read this section, because actually the feedback is for unsuccessful applications. So if you have a look at that, that will tell you what not to do in your application. So it'll give you a really good, if you can answer everything that is in that feedback list, then you've got a pretty strong application, because the feedback are reasons why your application might not be successful. With this round, as in other rounds, there's no income or match funding requirements. And developing your creative practice is for individuals and collectives. And if you're applying as a group or a collective, then you need to nominate a lead individual, because obviously if you're successful, the grant has to be paid into a bank account, and it can't be paid into an organisation's bank account. It needs to be in your bank account. And it will be a bank, and you have to have a bank account based in, you have to be based in England and have a UK bank account. Access costs, so you can actually apply for access costs in addition to the ceiling of 12,000 for disabled applicants. And you will be asked to tick a box, which is your supported art form or discipline. Developing your creative practice is a program where it kind of, you have to tick one of these boxes. If you fall somewhere in between, or if you feel like you can tick one or more box, start to think about your project and what lens you would look through. So for instance, you might be working, you might be a performer, you might be a performance artist, and you might be working with maybe kind of, or wanting to explore kind of theatrical and choreography, theatre and choreography. Actually think about yourself first. Would you class yourself as visual arts, or would you be classed in, music or choreography or theatre? So always go back to your own practice, not the actual project that you're applying for. So yeah, I would assume that most people who are on this Zoom their supported art form or discipline will be visual arts. And you need to have at least 1 year's creative practice experience outside a formal education context to mid-career. And, there are many ways of looking at this. And what I have noticed is that, there are applications that have been successful where people might be feel like they are going back to their practice. So even though they might not have practiced for many years, they would still class themselves as emerging because they have, only just restarted. So again, it's probably worth thinking about that and where you feel you place yourself, rather than what the kind of world might tell you. So for instance, I used to go to art school. I did practice for a while when I left art school, and then I haven't practiced for many, many years. If I take up practice, say even next week, I really wouldn't be eligible for developing your creative practice, because actually I would be considered emerging. And whilst of course had more than 1 year creative practice experience, I'm really restarting that experience again. And if you're in that position, it's probably worth just going to Arts Council inquiries just to check on this. So key dates. So we're in round 19 now, and the deadline is midday on the 14th of December 2023. And previously they have actually put dates of future rounds up, but they've not been announced as such. I mean, I went on the website just to check and double check everything, this morning, and the website is a little bit out of date, so I will be letting them know. So if you go on the website, don't be surprised if you find some information that you might think, hang on, that relates to round 17. Why does it not relate to round 19? It's just that Arts Council are a little bit behind in updating their website. Aim to complete 24 hours before the deadline. And that's because uploading everything into Grantium can take half a day. In the old days of Grantium, I believe it's been much improved. You quite often see messages on what was then Twitter saying Grantium has crashed. And so again, the kind of aim to complete 24 hours before the deadline is clearly, if everybody's putting their applications into Grantium at 11 a.m. on the 14th of December, there could be, that little bit of a scare that, something might crash. But also, I think for your own sanity as well, taking time to upload information into Grantium is absolutely necessary, because it does have its kind of own logic, which doesn't quite follow, I guess, most people's logic. But you can, it is possible, if you leave yourself enough time to kind of think and check and make sure that everything's uploaded into Grantium. You will get an email confirmation, so check your junk and spam. I've had bad experience where I thought I'd met a deadline, the application had gone in, and actually, because the email confirmation wasn't coming to me because it was for an organization, I didn't even think that it hadn't stuck. And the reason that the application hadn't stuck in Grantium is because it was a PO box code, so it couldn't recognize it as a region, as an area. And there was, mad panic. But luckily, because Arts Council could see that I had everything in there way before the deadline, that was okay. But clearly, don't get yourself into that very stressful position. Decisions for round 19 will be on the 12th of March 2024, and the activity start date needs to be after this period. And I would say factor in at least 2 to 4 weeks to accept the grant and get paid. So in fact, I would say if you are starting your activity, you probably want to put a start date in of at least mid-April, if not actually May. And activity can last for up to 1 year. So key information, this is very important, and often I get this wrong, so I am going to read it verbatim. So we're looking at the 10th of October 2019 to date. If you have previously had a DYCP grant between the time of the 10th of October 2019 to date, you can't apply again in round 19. If you've made 2 unsuccessful applications from the period 10th of October 2019 to date, you can't apply to round 19. If you've never applied before, you can make an application to round 19. And actually, if you've had 1 unsuccessful application, you can make an application to round 19. And unsuccessful applications are ones that have been through the assessment process and you've had a decision on it. If you've made an ineligible application, that's fine, you can apply. What that means is your application was not assessed and it didn't have a decision on it. It was simply ineligible. This criteria is reviewed every round, and what we've seen is the dates move forward every round. Okay, so here's just some key information. I always like to look at what's been funded and, get the statistics, give me a bit of an idea of, what the competition is and, also, what I can expect. So basically, as I've said, ACE website's not quite up to date at the moment. So the information for round 18 was not available when I checked again this morning. But in round 17, there were 400 awards that were made, and they totaled 4.5 million, and the success rate was at 21%. And the average award was £11,222. And the out of those 401 awards, there was 144 visual arts applications were funded. So that makes that success rate a little bit better, 36%. And also the 49 of those awards were to individuals based in London. So 27% of the 144 applications that were funded, that were visual arts, were funded in London. So as you can see, there's a good spread across the regions. And so not everything is being funded in London, although I will say there are a large, what we know from our membership, but also Arts Council statistics, there are large concentrations of artists in London, the South East, South West and North West. And they've introduced feedback from successful applicants, so that you will get a letter with reasons, and the reasons are, as I've said, published on the Arts Council website. So you will be asked to tick an activity box, and as you can see here, this is a good indication of the types of things that would come in for developing your creative practice. So building new networks for future development and presentation of work, creating new work, experimenting with new collaborators or partners, international travel to explore other practice or work with mentors, professional development activities, and research and development time to explore practice and take risks. And you may be within your application doing one or more of these activities. And in terms of thinking about your activity, really explore ways to bundle activities into a coherent plan. I'm not sure whether we use that term actually in the UK. I lived in Australia for 4 years, and when you were buying things like, web, internet, TV, whatever, you'd go into the shop and you still had to do it like that. And they would say, we can bundle the activities. So I quite like the word though, because what it means is you bundle, your offer, but bringing the activities together, and think about the expertise that you might need to buy in terms of your activities, whether you need a digital interface, and also thinking about scheduling travel in advance and being aware of visa restrictions. So again, some of your activities as well could be taking place digitally. You don't always have to travel. And I think, the pandemic taught us that we don't always have to travel to, get professional development, mentorship, that type of thing. What Arts Council are less likely to fund is a one-off research trip or a residency that isn't tailored to you and the development of your practice. And I'm going to give you an example. It's kind of fictitious, but also it is something that has happened previously, but through just an example that I know about from my previous experience in the sector. So, for instance, this is a good example of a kind of bundling activities together into one coherent plan. So you could undertake a residency at the Cable Factory in Helsinki, which is a multi-art form residency venue. By the way, brilliant residency venue. And your work will benefit from the engagement with musicians and writers. And then while you're there, you might attend and or speak at a conference. I put IAA in there because we have connections with the International Artists Association. And then you might, if it's on at the same time, or you might visit Helsinki Biennale or other key exhibitions that are on, and meet with the artists and curators. That expands your contacts and new markets. And then you might show or share work in progress from the residency with an artist-run organization in Helsinki. And that again gives you the new audiences and critical input. So this is a kind of, it's real in the sense that I know somebody that has done this. However, it's a kind of, it's an example really how you can create a residency that actually has many more inputs than just going to a residency. So getting started. So Grantium, you need to register an applicant profile if you haven't got one already. And validation can take 1 to 2 days. It can sometimes take up to 10 days. So I would say register as soon as you can. If you've already got a profile, make sure that it's up to date. You don't want that email going to an address that you don't use anymore. And actually, very recently with AM bursaries, we had somebody contact us that said that they hadn't received an outcome from their bursary application. And actually what we had on our profile was it wasn't an up-to-date email. So we'd sent it to an old email address. So also there's an eligibility questionnaire, and I've put personal access costs alert here in capitals, big letters. That's taking me back to primary school. And the reason for this is in your eligibility questionnaire, you will be asked for a figure around personal access costs. And this figure pulls into your budget in Grantium. Now you can edit that figure in Grantium, but why, let's save yourself the whole world of pain of doing that, because it is complicated, and actually work out your costs before you do the eligibility questionnaire, because if you work out the correct costs then will pull through into your budget on your application form. And it'll save you if you're at that last stage of actually then going in, editing, making changes. And you need to prepare in advance images of your work. So you can submit 10 images of your work, 5 pages long, as an attachment. And what I will say, and I say in every one of these, compress your images. It was a completely different funding program, but I had to submit a funding application and with attach a document with some images in for that particular artist. And I was up against it. We do get up against it. And basically, I couldn't work out why the application wouldn't stick. And it was because my attachment wouldn't attach because it was too big. And that's because the images, even in a PDF, were too big. So I had to go in and compress all my images. And I think I got that application in something like, I don't know, like right by the deadline. It was quite a kind of worrying really at the time. So compress your images, and you can actually add in a web link. Make sure the web link works. And I can tell you now the amount of time I've assessed applications and I've gone to a link and it's it's not connecting. Or another one is if the web link is for Vimeo and I haven't got the password, or also the Vimeo upload is timed out, because actually if you think about it, getting your application in from the 14th of December and not getting a decision until the 12th of March, that's quite a long time. So you need to make sure that any web link is going to work for the whole of that time, because applications aren't assessed immediately. They have to go through lots of checks and processes, etc. And then another thing is if you go to a web page, it's only one web page that the assessor will look at. So often your home page is not the best page, because actually it needs to be a page where that's where your work is. Again, I looked at a web link for actually one of our Artists Council members after they had attended one of these quite a long time ago now. And the web page was brilliant. It had a summary of the work. It had some work in progress on it. I could click on a little link to a film of the performance work. And so, yeah, so really think, if you're driving an assessor to a web link, what do you want the assessor to see about you and your work? You will also have to attach a letter of support. So make sure you've got this all sorted out before you start to make the application. It can include reviews or external views of your work, and it needs to be written by somebody that supports the quality of your work. This could be somebody working for an organization that you've had an exhibition at, that type of thing. These are just some words that I've pulled off old applications in terms of, what people have applied for. So there you've got studio time, visual poetry, new skills, performance workshops, web-based daydreaming. So lots of different things. You can see that, it's a real kind of wide scope. Neuro now outside of frameworks, and then painted yarn shifting towards performance, curatorial practice, engraved botanicals, so and evolving and re-emerging older artists. So lots of different things that people apply for. And now I'm going to talk about the application. And so, there is a document on Arts Council website, which is the application questions. And so it might be useful as well for you to look at that document. So basically, the first question is your work, and it's 1,800 characters with spaces. Just a little tip about Grantium. If you work in Word and then cut and paste into Grantium, something weird, don't ask me what it is, but it doesn't have the same character count with spaces. So always make sure that you're slightly under the 1,800 characters with spaces in Word, because it will come up, if you're dead on that, it will come up with saying that it'll cut you off. And I have no idea why that is, but it just is like that. So top tip, make it shorter. And actually, just because something says 1,800 characters with spaces, you don't have to write up to that amount. But also don't write so little that you haven't addressed the actual things that Arts Council want you to address in the application. So this is really the question, which is the main focus of your artistic practice, your achievements to date, so your track record. So for example, you just need to kind of group these. It doesn't need to be too long. Key exhibitions, productions, publications, commissions, etc. Work with any established creative or cultural partners. So if you've had exhibitions, or if if you've done like, I don't know, like educational workshops, that type of thing. Any other information relevant to your track record. And you also need to show that you're ready to benefit from a development opportunity. So in translation, this means this is your shop window. It's about you and your practice, and what do you want to tell ACE about yourself, your work achievements, and most importantly, keep it simple, mainly because somebody assessing your application might not have a visual arts background, so probably don't have any kind of, shorthand into, what you're saying. And also, they could, it's highly likely they would not know you and your work. I always give this when I'm writing stuff like this. I always give it what I call the Howard test. Howard is my brother. So if what and he's not in the arts at all. So if I was trying to tell him about me, my practice, and what I've done today, I would definitely need to keep it simple. Also, he might get a little bit bored if I made it too complicated or overly long. So what this does is this question tells the assessor that you have a track record and that there is an interest in your work. And think of this question as a combination of a biography, CV, and a short narrative about your practice. So if you think about, if you were writing a biography, you probably include a little bit of information, key bits of information from your CV, and you'd also want to write a very short narrative about you. So again, kind of think of this as a combination of all of those things. And it needs to end with an indication of where you are now and what you want to do next. So it kind of like, it leads then into the next question, which is your development. So tell us about the development opportunity you want to undertake, what you hope to get out of it, and how you'll go about it. And again, this is 1,500 characters with spaces. Make it shorter if you're doing it in Word first. So it's really about what you want to do. So the previous question was telling the assessor about you and your work and your track record. And this question is, what is it you actually want to do? What you'll get out of it and how you'll organize it. So you need to identify the opportunities and really research these ahead of doing this question. And also, if you've got any confirmation. So for instance, if you were working with a particular collaborator, mentor, or making work for potential exhibition in the future, any confirmation is actually good. And why you would need this extended period of development. So how you'll manage the activity, is it realistic and well planned, and how you plan to access networks and contacts. And this is very important because I've seen a lot of applications whereby people have, it's basically read like travel itineraries, really, like I want to go here, there, and everywhere, and I'm going to meet XYZ. And often I've queried whether, so a great example would be where somebody said that they were going to meet with a commercial gallery. And then I look at the commercial gallery, I look at that person's work, and I think there is absolutely no connection between that artist's practice and the type of work that that commercial gallery and artists that that commercial gallery represents. So why? And if it's for some kind of mentorship, then fine. But if it's actually for, wanting to get into, the gallery's programming, then I would question that. And then another element that I've seen is, so flight schedules like crazy, back and forth and all over. So think about your kind of flight itinerary if you're going to visit more than one place. And then another really kind of key one here is if you have something confirmed, then that tells the assessor that actually, this is realistic and well planned. And a good example of this is I remember seeing an application a long time ago, not for DYCP, but it was kind of a similar type of program that the Australia Council used to run. And it was to do a residency and be mentored by Alofa Eliasson. And I thought that's highly unlikely. And actually, I did go and look at the Olafa Eliasson's studio in Reykjavik on the website, and that's what they do offer. But because there was nothing in there that was confirmed, I went and looked that up. Arts Council are getting many applications. They're not going to have time to look that up. So, you know, including confirmations really helps. And I always say with this, apply the so what approach. So if you're writing everything down that you want to do, you know, if you say to yourself, so what, that generally will tell you why you want to do it and what you hope to get out of it. I always think that that's a good one. With this, with the question, your development, think about why is this important for your practice at this point, and how will it create future opportunities? So again, you might want to do a period of research and development that will lead to making new work, which actually might lead to exhibitions in the future. That's fine. The future outcomes don't need to be absolutely locked down, but it's useful to have some idea of what they might be. What are your main aims for the activity? Why is this the right point to take some development time? What you want this development to lead to, and what will be different about your practice as a result of this development. And that's really important. So with this question, your development, this tells the assessor what you want to do and why. It's really easy to concentrate on the activity in this question, but don't forget to link the activity to outcomes. So what do you want to achieve, and what is the expected impact on you and your practice? So for instance, with that research and development opportunity, the activity that you might want to undertake, it could lead to, you know, exhibition opportunities or commission opportunities. So it's really important not to say the kind of why you want to, not to just list the activities, but really why you want to do it. What do you expect the outcomes to be? And what is the expected impact on you and your practice? And if you apply the so what approach, it generally gives you a good idea of how to write that bit. Okay. You will be there is a budget section, and it's your expenditure, and again you can actually put in access costs here. And so with the access costs, they can be over and over the top end, which is £12,000. So, and if you need any guidance, I would definitely get in touch with ACE around access costs, because as I said, they can actually provide you with the funds to employ a support worker to help you with your application. So you need to include a fee for your time. You need to show how all your figures have been calculated in the description field. For example, you can show the number of days and the daily rate for any fees. So you can make this really simple. So you can say specialist mentoring, 2 days at £200 per day is £400. This is an example that might not be the industry standard for specialist mentoring. So always include appropriate costs and industry standard costs. I think a big mistake that people make as well is around calculating studio time. What you need to do with studio time, you need to calculate it for the amount of time that you are going to spend on the activities that you've got in your application. So you'd pro rata that. So for example, if you were doing your activities 1 day a week for a year, then clearly you're not going to put 12 months worth of studio costs in there. You're actually going to be putting in 12 days. It's not 12 days, the 1 day a week. So you need to be able to do the pro rata cost on that. And so again, just keep it simple, relate it to the activity. Another example is, and I can never remember which way round it was, but I was looking at an application. It was actually an AM bursary application where the applicant, I think, had put that 3 people were traveling to LA and then there were only flights for 2, or it was the other way round. And I kind of looked at that and I thought, that doesn't make sense. Now, obviously, we are a little bit nicer and we will, if we think the project we can fund, we never have enough money, obviously. If we can fund it, we can ask those questions afterwards. And make sure that people, have put in the right amount of funds. But Arts Council are not going to do that because they've got, a lot of applications. So just keep it simple and relate it to the activity. And then you'll be asked to do an activity plan. So this is a table to list the main stages and tasks of the development period that you're applying for, from your start date onwards, to plan out your time and identify the key milestones. So again, you might want to, put in the main stages of the activity. So can be as simple as you have a planning stage, you have a stage for developing the partnerships that you need to develop, a stage for doing the research. You might attend events. So one of those key stages might be attend Helsinki Biennale with a date. And when you might want to do some evaluation with dates, keep it simple. It doesn't have to be a really, complicated thing, this. What I will say about the activity plan is, again, in Grantium, I did a touring application and I got one of the dates out of sync and I had to start it all over again. And that was, kind of like, oh no, because it was a complex application. But, if you look then at your activity plan and you think something's wrong, you are literally going to have to take out everything up to the point where you need to insert the thing that you forgot, and then you have to put everything else in again. So it's just a top tip there. Work it out on paper beforehand. And then I just want to talk a little bit about, the actual application process itself. So it's really important to understand the process and the potential outcomes. So you could get funded, you might not get funded. And as you saw, I did give you the success rates. So really important to kind of think about that self-care and think about rejection as the start of a conversation. You will get feedback. And as I've said, with the feedback, read ahead and try not to give the panel a reason to reject your application. Most rejections are due to not enough money, timing, project not fitting criteria, management, etc. And also, because Arts Council gets way more applications than they can actually fund, they do want to support a broad range of projects. So they will do something called portfolio development. So for instance, if there were no visual arts applications in Yorkshire, highly unlikely, but I'm just giving you this as a fictional example, and there were 10 in London and there's been many applications in London, they might take a view. I'm just saying, it might not be true, of this, but they might take a view that actually, because they haven't funded anything in Yorkshire to fund that, bearing in mind that all of the applications have to be fundable in the first place. They wouldn't take that decision if the application in Yorkshire wasn't fundable. So they do something called portfolio development, and that's so that they get a good spread of applications and art forms across England. And remember, what you do is extraordinary. I probably update my CV and biography once or twice a year. I apply for jobs on average every 4 to 5 years. I make applications for funding in a work context, and while it's disappointing when they're not successful, it's not personal. And I just want to go back, talk about one. I think there's a couple of things. I think I skipped this slide, so I'm going back just to go through this slide. And don't worry, nothing here is in fact, these are the things that are right at the end of the application, but I usually talk to people ahead, so for you to get ahead of this. But I just realized that this slide was skipped. So I'm just going to quickly go through this. So there are, at the end of the application, there are some questions that you'll get asked, and they're monitoring data questions, and you can actually not answer them if you don't want to. But these are questions about your income from your practice, equal opportunities data, etc., which also includes socioeconomic data. And these are anonymized. They're taken away. They're not attached to your name or anything like that. They're looked at separately. And the reason that they're asking questions about your income and income from your practice is because they're trying to understand at the moment what artists make from their practice, but also that kind of freelancer workforce and what that looks like. So really don't think if you're answering these questions that they're going to have any impact on your application whatsoever. They don't. As you know, Let's Create is Arts Council England's 10-year strategy. You don't have to read the strategy to apply to developing your creative practice. However, you will have to tick a box to say which of the Let's Create outcomes you actually will contribute to. And it would be very easy to think it's creative people because you are a creative person. Actually, the one you need to take is a creative and cultural country, because what that one is it's about investing in artists and arts organizations and innovation and risk, etc. To ensure that we have a creative and cultural country. Obviously, some of you might be applying for time to maybe research and develop maybe, an educational workshop type practice. Then actually it might be that you meet cultural communities and creative people as well. But if in doubt, tick a creative and cultural country. And if you are weighing up applying for developing your creative practice or a project grant, a National Lottery project grant, in the long guidance, go to page 14. There's a really useful table that will guide you on whether you should apply for a project grant or developing your creative practice. And if you've got any live applications, so if you've made an application and you're waiting for a decision on it, then you cannot make another application to Arts Council England. And if you have had an application, if you've had funding from Arts Council England, but you haven't completed your reporting, then you can't make an application either. So check that you've done all your reporting if you've already had an application. Also, as I've said, you can't have if you're already part way, you've got a decision on an application or you've got an application waiting to be assessed, then you can't apply. Okay, so that is me. So I'm just going to go right to the end again. So thank you for listening, and thank you for bearing with me, especially around the start. And if you've got any questions that we don't answer today, then please get in touch with membership at a-n.co.uk, and we will prioritize answering your questions in the next week, because obviously week or so, because the deadline is fast approaching. Okay, ready for questions, Jack?
Well, unsurprisingly, Julie, we have lots of questions. There's one here from Isabel, which is, do you need to prove the 1 year's experience in a formal way? For example, residencies or exhibitions.
You don't. However, with the first question, your work, you will be asked to, in that question, you do have to put a little bit about your track record, and that will give, I guess, a sense of, your practice today and what you've done, whether that is exhibitions, residencies, etc.
Andrew has asked, is there an expectation from ACE that I ask for less than the cost of the project I'm applying for?
No. And in fact, if you want to watch that actually, because you really need to apply for what you need. So if you're applying for a lot less, well, Arts Council could look at that unfavorably and think that that's bad planning, because you haven't researched the costs correctly. So if you're putting things in cut price or whatever, so I think you should work out your costs. Obviously on paper, well, on paper's a bit old fashioned, but yeah, work out your costs beforehand. And then if it's coming to much more than the £12,000 ceiling, you might think about, actually, actually cutting bits of activity rather than, doing a kind of, okay, I'll just make everything half price. So, because Arts Council are realistic as well, and what they can expect for £12,000.
Tim has asked, can we use the funds to buy equipment?
You can. However, I would suggest that there's a lot of information sheets, and it is probably worth looking at the information sheet around buying equipment. If you buy equipment, you would want to really think about what the impact that's going to have, not just on your professional development and your creative practice, but also in terms of those future opportunities.
Emily has asked, is it at least 1 year's practice or not more than 1 year?
At least 1 year's practice. And that again is because if you think about the your work question, you do have to have a track record to apply to DYCP. Otherwise, you'll have not much to say in that question. And interestingly, it's actually a longer question in terms of the amount of space that they give you than your development for the actual project itself, by a whole 300 characters with spaces.
Tony has asked, how often is DYCP available?
There's usually 4 rounds a year, and normally what will happen is they will publish the dates. Well, what's happened more recently, I should say, rather than normally, is they publish the dates for the next round after the one that's open at the moment. But I haven't, they haven't updated the website, but I think we can expect that there will be another round.
Helen has asked, if your practice has been interrupted through illness for 3 years, does that make you ineligible?
No. And I think you with the your work question, it's probably worth maybe just having a line in there, very simple, that you took some time out from your practice, for health reasons. You don't have to say anything more than that. You could say, other people might say for caring reasons. There are many reasons why people take time out of their practice.
Bridget has said, I'm unsure about the category to choose. I want to develop into a community artist. Would that go under visual arts?
Well, yes, if your primary format that you want to take in terms of being a community artist is through visual arts expressions and, I guess, end results, then yes, you would take visual arts. There is actually there is a combined arts box, you can tick that as well. But I think, as I said, think about yourself and your practice first, and then how you might apply that practice through, if you want to become a community artist, are you applying your creative practice through that? And if your creative practice is, primarily visual arts, then tick visual arts.
There's a question here, which is, do all activities need to be confirmed, or can they be speculative, dependent on if the funding is given? How much evidence needs to be given?
Yeah, they can be speculative. However, given that, this is a fund which is about having the opportunity to develop your practice and really, needing that time to take time out and get on with these particular activities, it is better to have them confirmed, because what that shows is that you are absolutely serious about this activity and it is absolutely critical and crucial to your professional development and your creative practice. So having things confirmed is always better. I think if you've got anything that is, I think speculative is not a word I would want to use, actually. If you've got things that are unconfirmed, shall we say, rather than speculative, I think that what you really need to make sure is that those are realistic. Because if you get, I'm not saying you would get somebody like me, but I can cast a critical eye over things and think that is not realistic given this person's work to date and track record to date. So I would say, having things confirmed is better.
Debbie has asked, do you mean 2 applications in a row or in total?
Is this about the restrictions on applying?
Yes, it was asked earlier on in the presentation,
Okay.
Julie.
Yeah, no, the restrictions on applying, it's not it's if you have made 2 unsuccessful, so if you've applied for developing your creative practice twice and have been unsuccessful, and those 2 applications were made between the 10th of October 2019 and today, and well, to December the 16th, because that's the deadline. Is it this deadline? Yeah. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, 14th, sorry. Then you can't apply in this round. However, you might be able to apply in the next round. I don't know. It changes each time.
Alexandra has asked, please define mid-career. Does it apply if you've had a long career but haven't been successful?
I think, I'm always really kind of interested in this terminology, because I think, if you were an actor, would you call yourself early, mid, or established? Probably not, and so you might, you might be an actor and be in productions doing stuff, but perhaps it's not, the Royal Shakespeare Company, perhaps it's not TV, perhaps it's not film, but you could still be a mid-career actor. So I always think it's a little bit strange, this kind of groupings for visual arts. But absolutely, I think you need to make that decision. And actually, what is success? Because success can be determined by the objectives and the parameters you set for yourself. So actually, I would say that, you don't have to have, your work in tape to be considered a successful artist. If you're doing amazing work in your community and it's, reaching the people that you want it to reach, then, does that make you a mid-career artist without success? I would say it makes you a successful artist. I don't know whether I've answered that very well, but I do think it really is about you and your practice, what you do, where you feel you are, but also remembering that kind of idea of success in the visual arts is perhaps, a kind of, I don't know, like the 1%, and it's only one view of success.
Louise has asked, if you receive the emergency grant during the pandemic, can you apply for round 19?
Yes, because it was a completely different grant.
Louise has also asked, I have a Grantium account but can't remember my username. Do I need to set up a new account?
No, just actually get in touch with inquiries. It's a bit like when you forgot your password. You have to ring up. I'm constantly ringing up my TV provider. So no, they'll be able to recover your account for you.
Okay, Amy has said, how do you say you've got confirmation? Can you just say it in the wording of the application, or should you have email confirmation attached with your work bit? Do you need to prove confirmation?
You don't necessarily need to prove confirmation. However, as I've said, usually it's quite easy to kind of, cast an eye over an application and know whether, it's realistic or not. I think, if you say it's confirmed, then you will be taken, at face level, and there is an amount of trust in there as well. Your attachment document is actually for images of your work. That's not to say you can't put a bit of text in there. But what text you want to put in there is up to you. But remember that what the assessor is meant to look at is, the 10 images, and it can't be more than 5 pages long. Your
Emily,
confirmation, when you would say that something is confirmed, you do that in the um, uh, uh, your development question, and clearly, if it's confirmed, you're going to know when it's happening, and you'll put it into your activity plan.
okay, Emily has asked, is there a ratio to materials and artist fee and the other elements which is preferable?
No is the short answer. I think what you need to do is look at your activities that you want to complete, and think about how you might budget for that.
Stephanie has asked, I noticed on the eligibility guidelines for the National Lottery grants, it says that artists from England and the wider UK can apply. Does this apply to this program as well, as I'm presently based in Wales?
I think I looked at that actually when I was doing, because I did the project National Lottery Project Grants seminar, artist drop in last month, and it relates to the National Lottery Project Grants. It's not in any of the eligibility for developing your creative practice. Sorry. However, you might want to look at the Arts Council Wales funding, and we are actually probably a little bit overdue doing Wales and Scotland. So we will actually schedule those in.
Okay, Kate has asked, part of my application is to receive mentorship from more established artists. How much should I budget for mentorship fees?
Ask the artists. So ask them what they would charge. And that's part of the confirmation, which will make your application stronger.
There's a question which is slightly related to that, which is there any way you can get one-to-one help with an application? I am registered disabled.
Yes, you can. So you need to contact, if you go on the website, or you need to contact inquiries at Arts Council, and you can get access support. And you can get funding for an access support worker to help you fill in your application.
Laura's asked, if something is confirmed but falls through, what happens? For example, I had a residency confirmed and then the organisation closed 6 months later. Hence, so was my residency.
Oh, well, actually, I guess what you're saying is if you were successful and you'd put down this residency as part of your activity, um, well, the main thing to do is to actually contact Arts Council and say that this has happened. But also, what you can do is look up maybe a similar residency that would actually get you the same outcomes, and that usually wouldn't be a problem. But always, I would say you need to contact Arts Council first.
Debbie has asked, can a letter of recommendation come from someone who has purchased my work in the past, or does it need to be from a recognised person from the arts, like a museum or an art gallery?
Yeah, well, it says it has to be somebody who can kind of vouch for the quality of your work. So I don't see that that would be an issue. If you wanted to really kind of double check, then actually contact inquiries at Arts Council England, and they would probably be able to confirm. But if it's, the wording would not exclude a collector writing about your work, vouching for your work in the letter of support.
Sophie has asked, if looking to set up a community craft studio, which would benefit my own professional development too, would this be eligible for DYCP or project grants?
I think that, without knowing the details, it probably sounds a bit more project grants. However, I will refer you to page 14 of the long guidance, and that should help you. And if you still need any more kind of input after that, I would say call or contact inquiries at Arts Council and see if they can steer you in the right direction.
Okay, Louise has asked, is craft-based work considered to be under the umbrella of visual arts and therefore relevant for applications?
Yes.
And Laura's asked, how long should the letter of support be?
Well, there isn't, I don't think it actually says how long. However, there will be a, a size for the attachment. So clearly, if somebody wrote something that was really long with lots of, then it might not attach because the actual, attachment might be too big, but it doesn't actually say how long. Not that I can think of. I mean, I would have kind of noticed that when I was scrutinizing it.
Lisa has asked, would a step change be eligible? For example, I'm an experienced arts producer and curator looking to develop my own visual arts practice, or will it only fund visual artists looking to develop their practice further?
Step changes are fine. I think the main thing is to really kind of, talk about in that your development section why, but also in your work section, obviously all of your track record is as a producer and curator. And I think you need to kind of end that section, that question, by saying, you know, what the next steps you think are for your career practice, because obviously being a curator and a producer is a practice, a creative practice. And then in the your development, that's when you need to make sure that you are really saying why you're going into this, and that that basically how actually as well your track record has helped. And then obviously in your work, your attachments your attachment is probably going to more relate to your track record. So just make sure that you don't confuse um the assessor with lots of images of work that you have been involved in as a producer and a curator, And then they might think, hang on a minute, this person's practice is all over the place because clearly you've been working with different artists. So you need to be really clear, I think, in terms of captions for those images of your role in them.
Okay, Julie, have we got time for a few more questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
We've got a question here from Isabel, which is, do you know if DYCP has gotten more and more popular every round?
Oh, that's interesting because because when I do the statistics, they tend to kind of look the same. The success rate tends to kind of look the same around the 20s, the 20%. And obviously, it's a little bit higher for visual arts because generally more visual arts applications get funded through DYCP, but that's probably because more are coming in. So the overall success rate for visual arts, it doesn't change massively between one round and the next. And they have actually over the period of DYCP put more money in.
Emily has asked, the prices of things can change between planning and execution. Should we put in a contingency amount to cover for this? I can't afford to pay for the whole project in advance on the off chance that I get the grant.
Oh, yeah, you can have contingency as a budget line. You just need to make sure, as a budget line, you've explained in that little, there's like a box, where you can put, some narrative. So you could just put, I don't know, contingency for cost increases.
Okay, one of the first questions, which was in the Q&A, was from Ivy, which is, I have an artist residency planned in the USA where a collaboration with an American-Canadian poet will take place. What activities there may be supported by DYCP? Can I be supported for my time or pay for the time of the overseas creative, or for my tickets if booked in advance?
All of the above. As long as you can say in your work, because your development, sorry, which is where you will talk about the activities, what the impact it will have on your creative practice, your professional development, and your future opportunities. And can I just go back to that last question previously? You can't apply for anything retrospectively. So don't pay for anything before that you've put in your budget before you have an answer on your application. So retrospective funding is ineligible. Your application will be made ineligible.
Liz has asked, when you upload images, is it just captions or space for explanation of the work?
I think you need to make a decision whether you want to be a bit clever on that or not. The assessor is only really allowed to use that document to get a sense of your work. And so, they need to see your work. But if you want to, and remember, it can only be 5 pages long, the attachment. So it's entirely up to you whether you want to be a bit cheeky and put a bit more information there, providing you can fit it in with your 10 images.
Piranha has asked, regarding word counts and characters, will the system tell you if you've exceeded the count after putting in each section or only on completion of all sections? I've
No,
used Word to keep the count, but this varies.
it will, but it doesn't tell you. You write and it doesn't go in because you've exceeded the word count. Because I've put applications straight in and I've also done them on Word and then copied and pasted in. So it just like if you copied and pasted something in from Word and it was too many characters with spaces, then it would just cut off at the point. So it's always worth actually, if you do any cut and paste, to read through that actual section once you put it in case it's actually just cut itself off, part of it off.
Bridget has asked, if the outcome changes due to the learning during the development, is that a problem?
Um, Generally not. However, you will have to provide a report at the end of your project. So if in doubt, always go back to Arts Council. But generally, they're pretty flexible as long as the outcomes are met in the best way that they can be, because obviously they recognize that things change. And Emily, I've just seen your follow-up around paying for things in advance. Simply, it's if you read all the guidelines, I'm afraid that, yeah, I mean, you might have something like you might want to, pay for a flight in advance because you can get it cheaper because you know that you want to go to that residency. You can't put the flight then into the budget. You simply cannot put any costs that you've already paid for into the budget. And when I say confirmation, it if it's really about like confirmation that you can, I don't know, so say it's about rental hire of a specialist kind of studio for, I don't know, printmaking or something like that, then all you can do at that point is if they want full payment to confirm that time in the specialist studio facilities, then unfortunately you won't be able to say it's confirmed. You can just say that you've looked into it and it's, this is the estimated cost. And but as long as you've done your research and the assessor can see that you're serious about this, and I think that'll be fine.
Megan has asked, can dates in the activity plan overlap?
Yeah, they can. I mean, I tend to try not do that because if they overlap, have you thought about maybe say it's something like, I don't know, May to June, meet with mentor, and then also in May to June, you are flying to go out to your residency, which starts in July. You can put both of those activities in May to June. And in fact, you could make it a May to July bit in the activity plan.
Okay, Julie, have we got time for maybe one or two more questions?
Yep. 4 minutes, and I really have to go.
Okay. Okay, there's one here which is if you are successful, what do you have to provide afterwards? For example, a report, images, receipts, invoices, etc. If you don't use exactly the amount awarded, what happens with the unused money?
Well, the unused money, clearly, Arts Council can ask for it back. You won't have to provide receipts and all of that. You usually do a short activity report.
Okay, Rachel has asked, can you exclude a cost you've already paid for from the budget? Would your application still be eligible?
Yeah, but I think you might want to say um, why it isn't in there. I'm just trying to think where you would put that. I'm looking at my list here. You might want to put in your development a very short sentence of, I'm applying it because if your application, okay, here's the test. Does your application still make sense without that in, or does your application not make sense if it's not there? And if it doesn't make sense because that particular explanation isn't in there, then I think you need to probably include a short line in your work, in the your work question.
Okay, Sarah said, can you apply if you've recently graduated from an MA in October?
Well, a lot depends on the your work question. So if you've got, I'm assuming that if you're doing an MA, that you have got more than 1 year of practice. But I think if you go on to, if you've gone from doing your foundation, if you've gone from school, foundation, undergrad, so BA, MA, and in that whole period of time, you haven't got any you haven't built up any sort of exhibition history or, or any kind of, history of kind of, track record, it's all been through education, then I think you would definitely have to have had at least 1 year's practice outside. I think, though, what you might want to do is just check that with Arts Council England, because I'm just making that up. But that would be my reading of the guidelines.
Okay, Julie, we've got 1 minute. Here's a question. If I'm applying for the residency, which is for 1 month, but my overall project is 1 year, do I need to write about the whole project, even though the funding is just for the residency?
Ah, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think they're very clear in the guidelines around. It would be unlikely that they would fund a kind of one-off, like, a travel or residency. They really, they do say about residencies being tailored to you. So it might be worth putting down, some of the additional narrative in your development to the actual residency, as you say, itself, because otherwise it will just look like a standalone residency. And, you really need to talk about the impact that will have on your creative practice, professional development, and outcomes for the future. Michael's question I can answer very simply. There is no upper age limit to the application. No way on the application do you have to fill your age in, or unless there are some monitoring questions about that. And as I've said, that's just data. It doesn't have any effect on your application.
Right, should we wrap it up there, Julie?
Yep. And as we said, anybody who didn't feel like they got their questions answered or they want more information, then happily, we can accept those through, if you just email membership@an.co.uk, then yeah.
Great. I'll pop the link to the project grants video in the chat as well if anyone wants to watch that from a few weeks ago.
Great. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for your patience at the beginning. Me and Jack have learnt something new about Zoom today. We can't both be the same person. Okay, bye-bye.